Good evening and welcome. This is Primetime News on TV1. Today is the 23rd of September 2021 and incidentally today is the International Day for Sign Languages and a gentle reminder to all our viewers to protect the linguistic identity and cultural diversity of all those who are differently abled. And as always, we have with us our sign language interpreter for tonight, Taraka Gabriel. Let's start off with a look at your headlines for tonight.
Children above the age of 12 suffering from chronic diseases to be administered COVID-19 vaccines from tomorrow. How will events concerning the Keravalapedia power plant unfold? Prime Minister and constituent parties hold crucial talks. Consensus reached to expedite the process of signing the Indo-Sri Lanka agreement. Samagi Janabalawegaya moves court against Ajit Niwad Cabral. Algola Vava turns into a puddle of mud. Ravaging elephants lay waste to Minipe.
On to those stories in detail. The results of the 2020 GCE ordinary level exams were released this evening. The results can be viewed on www.doenets.lk. Taking a look at more news, the inoculation of children above the age of 12 suffering from chronic diseases will commence from tomorrow. The inoculation process will be carried out centering the Colombo, Kurunegala and Anuradhapura districts. According to the Director General of Health Services, vaccines will be administered at the Kurunegala Teaching Hospital, Anuradhapura Teaching Hospital and the Lady Ridgeway Hospital for Children. The vaccination drive will be carried out from 9 a.m. onwards at the Lady Ridgeway Hospital for Children. Director of the Lady Ridgeway Hospital, Dr. G. Vijay Surya said, children will be screened by a doctor prior to the vaccine being administered. Children will be administered the first dose of the Pfizer vaccine and thereafter will be administered the second dose once 4 weeks lapse. The Presidential Media Centre had convened a media briefing today to apprise the masses on the government's plan to inoculate children.
What are cognitive disorders?
මේ ළමයි අනිත් ළමයි වාගේ නෙමෙයි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් සායනයකට සහභාගී වෙන ළමයි.
These children aren't like other children. They attend clinics and their immunity has been compromised. Illnesses such as diabetes, neurodisabilities, gene syndromes, children with chronic heart complications, respiratory complications and ailments related to the bladder, digestive system and so on.
මාර්ගයේ රෝග තියෙන අය සහ හන්දි රෝගවලට විශේෂයෙන් ප්‍රතිකාර ගන්න ඒ රෝගීන් තමයි.
Importance of vaccinating children suffering from cognitive disorders.
සමස්ත COVID මේ වෙනකොට සෑදුණු කණ්ඩායම.
If we assess the total COVID-19 cases in the country, 18% of them are below 20 years. When we conducted an analysis on 21 deaths below the age of 20, it was evident that 14 of them were suffering from chronic diseases.
ඒ කියන්නේ සංජානන ආබාධ තියෙන අය තමයි මරණයට පත් වෙලා තිබුණේ.
How many children with cognitive disorders have been identified?
දල වශයෙන් ළමයි
Roughly around 30,000 to 40,000 children can be expected with a maximum of 50,000.
පමණ සංඛ්‍යාවක් තමයි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ.
How will children with cognitive disorders be inoculated?
මේ අයගේ එන්නත් කරණයේ
Doctors will strictly monitor the inoculation process. The doctor must place his seal and recommend for the vaccine to be administered apart from the parent's signature.
ීමට නිර්දේශ කරනවා කියන්නේ.
What matters should parents consider when inoculating children?
දරුවාව අපි
We will administer the vaccine and monitor the child for a period of time. Therefore, do not expect this process to end soon. There might be a slight delay. Although we only require 30,000 vaccines, 200,000 doses have already been set aside. Parents do not need to fear over a possible shortage of vaccines.
නැත නොලැබෙයි කියලා.
Inoculating children from outstation.
අනිත් පළාත්වල ඉන්න අය ඒ පළාත්වලට
We will deliver the vaccine to other provinces. There is no requirement to get the vaccine administered from either Colombo or Kurunegala. The inoculation drive is being conducted in these 3 cities as a pilot process. Vaccines will be delivered to hospitals in all districts.
පළාත්වල ඉන්න අය ඒ අදාළ පළාතේ රෝහලේ එය ලබා ගැනීමට හැකියාව තියෙනවා.
A meeting was held today between Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and constituent parties of the government. The meeting was held at the Temple Trees.
The party leaders' meeting was convened to discuss how the gas pipeline system and a terminal at the Kerawalapitia power plant had been given to a US company without following the due process.
It is a party leaders meeting. There is no specific topic. The leaders of parties in the Sri Lanka Nidahas Podujana Sandhanaya have been asked to attend it.
Party leaders expressed the following views after the discussion.
A letter is to be handed over to the President with 10 or 11 signatures. We will request him for a meeting to express our views upon his return. We will convey our stance in that discussion. The Prime Minister acted in an unbiased manner. He didn't represent the ideology of any party. We expect that the Finance Minister will take our views into consideration. It was a party leaders meeting. We discussed matters peacefully.
LNG බලාගාරයේ ඇමරිකාවට විකිණීමක් සම්බන්ධයෙන් අද පක්ෂ නායකින් මොනවද කිව්වේ?
නෑ ඒක එහෙම මොනවත් කිව්වේ නෑ.
We were asked to explain the situation. It was done properly. A sale is not taking place through this. It has been proposed to give away 40%. That too will be for only 15 years, and not like how the previous government gave away the Hambantota port for 99 years.
අඩුතරමේ මේ ওই පහුගිය කාලේ කරා වගේ 99 අවුරුද්දටත් නෙමෙයි මේ හම්බන්තොට වරාය කරා වගේ කොනේ.
හැබැයි ඔබතුමාලත් එක්ක ඉන්න පක්ෂ නායකයින් නම් මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් විරෝධතාවය පළ කරනවා කියලා තමයි කිව්වේ.
නෑ කවුරුත් විරෝධතාවය පළ කරේ නෑ.
අද දිනේ එහෙම පළ කරේ නැද්ද?
නෑ කරුණු පැහැදිලි කර.
No, when we explained this, everyone understood that this would be beneficial to the country and a relief to the people who can't pay their electricity bills.
රටේ විදුලි බිල ගෙවා ගන්න බැරුව අමාරුවෙන් ඉන්න ජනතාවට සහනයක් වෙන දෙයක්.
දැන් මේක හොර රහසේ අස්සම් කරා කියලා චෝදනාවක් කෙල්ල වෙන්නේ ඇයි මේක?
නෑ නෑ
6ට රාත්‍රී.
නෑ නෑ මේ ගිවිසුමක්.
There is a specific time to sign an agreement. We know that they arrested Basil Rajapaksa to keep the Kaduwela court open until midnight. When a US company is signing an agreement in Sri Lanka, and when there are delays due to certain changes, there is no specific time to do it.
කාලෙ ගියයි කියලා ගිවිසුම් අත්සන් කිරීමට නියමිත කාල සීමාවක් නැහැ.
Leader of the opposition Sajid Premadasa says the government has endangered the energy security of the country by handing over control of the Yugadanavi power plant to a US-based firm.
Issuing a release, the opposition leader says no country in the world has called the tenders of supplying natural gas and tender of related infrastructure development jointly because those countries are aware that such a move would not ensure national security and energy safety in the country. It adds, quote, Yugadanavi power plant as a whole is due to belong to the Electricity Board by the year 2035 in terms of agreements with Electricity Board, end quote. The opposition leader questions as to why the cabinet remained silent while the Yugadanavi power plant was handed over to New Fortress Energy Limited of the United States via a Zoom meeting at midnight, foregoing accepted tender procedures. In conclusion, the release notes, quote, however, none of them can wash their hands off their share in this downright betrayal, end quote.
Political parties and civic groups say that Sri Lanka will lose authority over the energy sector by vesting the Yugadanavi power plant with a foreign company.
The agreement is being signed on the condition that it would be put forward to the cabinet. This agreement was signed in an inauspicious time at midnight. We don't accept these agreements. If this is an agreement that will benefit the people, why can't they be transparent about it? We express strong displeasure over this. Don't hold these matters a secret and loot public assets.
අමරිකා එක්සත් ජනපදයට
The United States will be able to deactivate Sri Lanka's power supply with the flick of a switch. This is placing national security at risk. It gives away our calls to scrap this agreement and to preserve the people's right to receive energy.
රටේ ජනතාවගේ පරම සුද්ධ වූ අයිතියක් ලෙස තබා ගන්න වහාම මැදිහත් වෙන්න.
දන්න විදියට මම දැක්ක විදියට
As far as I know, only 40% would be given away. 60% will remain with the government. Therefore, it is not a sale that is taking place. But there are certain issues that other parties are raising. A solution will be found to that through discussions. There is a difference between selling it off and operating it under a joint venture. The Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor policy says that we will carry out joint ventures.
වැඩසටහන යටතේ අපි හවුලේ ව්‍යාපාර කරනවා කියන කාරණේ තිබුණා. හවුල්කාර පක්ෂ මේ
When some parties are denationalizing state resources, there is something that we observe. Those parties unite for that cause. They join hands and display theatrics. The media also spreads those messages to the society. In a couple of weeks, they will all raise their hands in unison. Leave them and form a powerful force. Form a force that will oppose this. You are the ones who formed this government. Therefore, your job is not to remain silent while being in the government. We wish to remind you that you have the opportunity to come forward and show your power before someone criticizes you.
පෙන්වන්න අවස්ථාව තියෙනවා කියන කාරණාව මතක් කරන්න ඕනේ.
Minister Vimal Veeravansa told the media that it won't be given away to the US and that only a share would be given to a US company. We wish to remind Vimal Veeravansa that he opposed Google when he was in the opposition. Google doesn't represent the United States. It is a US company. The opposition that they showed at the time is not there now. The finance minister of this country is doing part-time jobs for US citizens. He is making decisions. They have disregarded the views of all trade unions, including the Electrical Engineers Union, and approved this secretly with the participation of the ministers.
China and the United States are important to the country in terms of investments. This is still in the discussion stage. We wish to state that nothing is taking place in a clandestine manner, unlike the previous government. Foreign media is reporting that there is only an understanding between both countries.
The foreign loans obtained for this will be paid off by next year. What remains to be paid is a small amount, that is about 14 million. There will be foreign loans to be paid outside the country. If there is a problem relating to the outflow of dollars, that will be resolved in the coming months. The Fortress company has said that 49% of the stake held by equity will be given. $35 million is to be received through this. The government also says that this company will be tasked with the gas supplies for 5 years. This is a farce. They are trying to sell gas to a US company in our lifetime. When there is a transparent tender and procurement process, a US citizen who is acting as the foreign minister and doesn't see transparency is giving this to a company in that country through a secret agreement. What will happen to the country's sovereignty? What are the so-called patriots saying? If one company is given control of the supply system, you will be able to raise the rates gradually. That is what happened in California in 2001. They increased it by multiple folds. The government faced a loss eventually. The governor had to go home. They had to formulate new laws.
දහගුණයකින් වැඩි කළා. ආණ්ඩුව වංකොලොත් වුණා. අන්තිමට ආණ්ඩුකාරයාට ගෙදර යන්න වුණා.
ඔබතුමාලා කියන විදිහට මේක දැන් රටට අගතියක් වෙන මේක දෙයක් නම් නැවත රිවර්ස් කරන්න හැකියාව තියෙනවා.
අනිවාර්යෙන්ම පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට පුළුවන්.
Definitely, the parliament can prepare the laws. They can make the decisions on monetary matters. The country's executive can do that. These decisions can be reversed.
රටක විධායක බලයට පුළුවන් එහෙම කරන්න. මේ ආපහු හරවන්න පුළුවන්.
Sri Lanka and India have agreed to conclude pending agreements between the two countries. This was discussed during a meeting between the foreign ministers of both nations. The meeting had taken place on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Peiris has told his Indian counterpart, Sri Lanka doesn't accept external steps to address internal matters. He had said the government is re-examining the Prevention of Terrorism Act, releasing LTTE prisoners and empowering independent institutions. The Sri Lankan minister had indicated there is strong political will to improve ties between the two nations. Indian Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar had said problems that arise after ethnic issues must be resolved. He had stressed the need for Sri Lanka to complete several projects that have not been implemented.
A discourse on preserving vital assets has emerged at a time where the authorities seem to have adopted a trend of relinquishing national assets and resources. Be that as it may, most of Sri Lanka's rural populace spend many sleepless nights keeping a keen eye on their farmlands and cultivations to protect them from encroaching animals. Residents of Minipe are such a segment of society who sacrifice sleep to watch over their fields. Last night, however, elephants encroached onto their village. What does one do when an elephant's trunk slides into your own home in search of food?
The elephant tried to get hold of the paddy sack using his trunk. It broke the window. We didn't have anything to fight back. Then I threw the chair at the elephant. The wildlife department should feel ashamed. They haven't provided us anything to protect our lives.
Herds of elephants which roam the banks of the Mahaveli River during the day encroach on the Minipe village come nightfall. They roam towards the village from the Randenigala Reserve. Last night, 8 houses in the village were destroyed by the ravaging elephants. The wild elephants not only razed to the ground houses in 31 and 25 stream in Morayaya, but also devoured paddy harvests the farmers of Minipe toiled hard to reap. Surprisingly, the villagers do not despise the wild elephants for their deeds, but vented out their frustration on responsible authorities who have turned a blind eye towards their woes.
No one is coming up with a solution to this issue. The government must intervene and provide us a sustainable solution to this conflict. Authorities are not giving us elephant crackers. They only give 2 crackers. We called them several times, but they didn't respond.
The Samagizana Balavegaya filed a petition with the Supreme Court seeking a ruling to appoint an independent person as central bank governor. The petition had been filed by the party's General Secretary Ranjit Mathuma Bandara and Parliamentarian Manusha Nanakara. The petition notes the central bank has sustained more than 10 billion rupees in losses during Ajit Niwad Kabral's previous tenure as governor. The petitioners argue that a forensic audit has revealed Kabral's conduct over the treasury bond scam and that vital evidence could be destroyed during his stint as the current governor of the central bank. The petitioner argues appointing a person who is facing such accusations can destroy the hopes of the people. The petitioners have therefore requested the Supreme Court to order officials to produce the central bank's forensic audit report in court and to investigate it. Ajit Niwad Kabral, President Secretary P.B. Jayasundara, Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa, Central Bank Deputy Governor P.M.J.Y.P. Fernando, the Attorney General and the Inspector General of Police have been named as respondents.
We know that the infamous hedging deal caused more than 55 billion in losses to Sri Lanka. $6.5 million had been transferred to a person in the US named Zuberi without the approval of the cabinet. Today, Zuberi is serving a jail term of 12 years. Ajit Niwad Kabral, the person who committed the wrongdoing, has been made central bank governor. We submitted facts to court today. Parliamentarian Manusha Nanakara had filed another petition seeking to prevent Ajit Niwad Kabral from serving as the governor of the central bank. A person who is the subject of investigation by the Attorney General's Department through the forensic audit reports has been appointed as the central bank governor at a time when the financial rights of the people and parliament should be protected while the economy must be maintained carefully. We are telling court that our fundamental rights as parliamentarians is being violated.
State Minister of Consumer Affairs Lasantha Algola says that the Consumer Protection Act will be gazetted from tomorrow. He made these remarks in light of incidents where traders have increased prices of goods amidst a shortage. Several factions have complained of a shortage in gas, milk powder and rice in the local market. Taking a look at more local news, the Joint Trainees Association alleges that the government is deceiving the graduates of the country. They are using the trainees to distribute goods, conduct surveys and weigh sugar at stores. They are burdening the trainees with all sorts of odd jobs, but still they have failed to implement a proper procedure to grant us permanent employment. We need to remind the government that last year alone it had failed to collect over 10.5 billion rupees worth of revenue. The sugar scam itself amounted to a loss of 15 billion rupees. Then came the oil scam. Around 2,000 billion rupees were looted through this. The Mendes company alone has a debt of 14,000 billion rupees to the government. While urging the public to tighten their belts due to the current pandemic, the government is helping their henchmen and friendly mill owners to earn profits. They rejected the request to increase the salaries of teachers. They even turned down the request made by the innocent estate workers to increase their daily wage up to 1,000 rupees. Similarly, our request to grant permanent employment was also turned down. Their excuse was that they do not have enough money. The government is spending money and wasting it on constructing jogging tracks and city beautification projects. They are spending this money targeting upcoming elections. Thus, the construction of jogging tracks near Wavers signal a forthcoming election. Such activities ultimately affect the magnificent Wavers that bring prosperity to the country. What is the fate that has befallen the Pahala Algola Waver? This body of water is what villagers call the Pahala Algola Waver. It supplies water to cultivate fields in the area. The project Irrigation Prosperity, aimed at refurbishing Wavers, was expected to benefit the Pahala Algola village. 4.4 million rupees were allocated for the project. However, it was halted later. As a result, all what is left is a massive pit of water. Villagers say that the bund of the Waver was broken down to remove a machine which was lodged in the Waver. Villagers are now calling for a project to restore the Waver, which is now a mere puddle of mud. Farmers across the country are facing multiple hardships at present, and the docile nature of authorities who are supposed to address those issues have compounded their woes further.
Farmers say the shortage of fertilizer has affected cultivations. They lament officials have continued to neglect their grievances. Some farmers staged a protest in a field in which an onion cultivation has failed. They say that they used organic fertilizer on the field.
These onions were cultivated using organic compost fertilizers, but there is no proper harvest. We don't have an income.
We had to abandon the fields in which we used compost fertilizer.
Farmers are contemplating whether they should continue farming. When the bacteria in compost fertilizer from China causes diseases, we will have to purchase medicines from China as well. The disease caused by organic fertilizer can be worse than what is caused through chemical fertilizer.
There is a myth among the people about organic and chemical fertilizer. Regardless of whether it is organic or chemical, it is some form of chemical that we are quite familiar with. There are some people misinterpreting this process and trying to propagate their own ideology to the masses according to their own agenda. It will cause great economic and social destruction. We will first use this fertilizer for paddy cultivation. There is a shortage of fertilizer for paddy at the moment. We are working on getting it in time for the Maha season. But if this fertilizer is used without a proper standard, there is a big risk to paddy cultivation. There are two types of bacteria identified in Chinese compost. In addition to that, there could be weeds. There may be invasive weeds. There could be bacteria. There could be fungus as well. What will happen to Sri Lankan soil when these organic fertilizers enter our country? We won't be able to regain the quality of our soil if some sort of disease spreads because of these imported Chinese fertilizer. Can we guarantee that the Chinese compost doesn't have weed, invasive weeds or fungus? No, we cannot guarantee that. We believe the government is trying to destroy the quality of our soil.
Farmers are facing several issues due to the lack of fertilizer. The failure to fetch a reasonable price for their harvest is affecting them further. While wild elephants encroach into their fields, caterpillars can be seen on crops in Lunugamvera. These caterpillars can be found across several acres of land. These caterpillars affect the plants at night. Farmers say they are running out of options to curb this menace.
They ask us to try various alternatives. Those medicines are not sold in shops. Later we realized that these treatments are of an extremely poor quality. They have to understand that we are purchasing them on credit. No one is held responsible for this. The Department of Agriculture is saying that they don't know anything about this and there is nothing that they can do. They're saying that they will conduct an investigation. By the time that they conclude their investigations, everything that needs to happen would have already taken place.
Farmers are urging the green gram plants needs to be protected. Failing to do it will place the lives of people in jeopardy.
A special lab to conduct PCR tests for foreigners arriving in the island was declared open earlier today.
The laboratory has been constructed near the Bandaranaike International Airport. PCR test results can be obtained in 3 hours at the lab.
When reports are given for tourists within 3 hours, fully vaccinated travelers will be able to enter the community. I believe that fully vaccinated tourists who undergo tests at this location and receive a negative result on their way to the hotel will be able to tour the country. That is our target.
Russia says it will increase flights to Sri Lanka from the 4th of November. Accordingly, 2 flights will operate weekly to the country. In more local news, SLPP Parliamentarian Dilan Pereira put forward several proposals to uplift Sri Lanka's economy. They opened liquor stores. People thought that the stores would be closed the following day. Therefore, some had purchased 10 or 12 bottles. I don't know who allowed them to remain open. But if no one is taking responsibility, I wish to say that I did it. What is the problem in opening liquor stores? Those who want to drink can do so, while the others can avoid it. Laws cannot be introduced to prevent a person from drinking. Is this country under Taliban rule? In their country, they don't allow people to watch IPL matches because there are cheerleaders who dance for a six. I feel that if the economy is to be improved, sandalwood cultivations must be allowed to run for several acres. What is the medicine purchased by men even amidst the COVID-19 pandemic? It is Viagra. We can make a Sri Lankan version of it. Those present here, including me, will purchase it. There is a medicine which reduces cholesterol and it is good for diabetes. We must allow the cultivation of that as well. It's called cannabis. Sri Lanka's exports have risen compared to last year, but official data does not reflect the true economic challenges faced by exporters. What is the true story behind this matter.
Where does Sri Lanka's exports stand? Sri Lanka has earned $7.8 billion from exports from January to August this year. It is an increase from $6.4 billion gained in the same period in 2020. But exports were affected last year as the COVID-19 pandemic broke out. In 2019, the exports from January to August stood at $8 billion. This raises questions on whether exports are on the rise. How are exporters faring as the pandemic continues?
There is a problem of shipping, no space, no vessels available for loading. Some of us are having containers packed and ready for shipment. This is affecting the exports, value for exports, and also buying power for the tea exporters to buy tea at the Colombo tea auctions. The producer groups, they predict less crops in the coming months, October, November, December, due to fertilizer issues, which will definitely have an impact on the exports and value of exports.
What are Sri Lanka's main exports? Sri Lanka gains most of its export income from apparels. Other top exports include tea, rubber and coconut products, spices and electronic devices. Exporters say the fall of the rupee has affected the import of raw materials required to export products. Will this affect the future of Sri Lanka's exports?
Shipping cost has been increased. That is one main concern for exporters. Of course, the shortage of dollars has a concern for some exporters because they need imports for exports. For an example, if I am a tea exporter, I may need like the polythene to pack the tea, which I have to import. So without that import, I actually can't export. When you are looking at exports, what we have to look at is basically our export growth as a percentage of GDP. Whether are we keeping the right pace, it all depends on our exports growth with the GDP.
Parliamentarian of the Tamil National People's Front, Selvarasa Gajendran, and 2 others were arrested today attending a commemoration while quarantine curfew was in effect. A group of people, including the parliamentarian, had planned to hold an event to commemorate Dilipan, who was a member in the early stages of the struggle for liberation. However, police intervened to suspend the event. Media spokesperson of police, SSP Attorney at Law Nihal Taldua said the group was arrested for flouting quarantine curfew but were released on bail thereafter. Onto a story Newsfirst has been following closely. For the second consecutive day, a large number of dogs held captive by 2 individuals were rescued by activists. Yesterday, Newsfirst reported a similar incident where a large number of dogs were rescued in Braybrook Place, Colombo 2. Today, the scene was repeated near Rajagiriya.
Today, a group of animal rights activists rescued another set of canines, and these were the scenes that ensued. Yesterday, animal rights activists filed a complaint made to the Slave Island police, noting that the animals were being confined to a garbage cart in deplorable conditions. The activists pointed out that they took matters to their own hands since authorities failed to intervene. Speaking to News First, the activists said that the animals will be taken to a treatment center where they will be cared for. They said the puppies will be available for adoption for anyone who is willing to nurture and take care of them. The large number of dogs found with the two individuals has raised many questions amongst concerned factions, including the unproven possibility of them being sold illegally to foreign workers.
The Central Environment Authority is investigating an oil patch reported from the Diyavanna Oya. Newsfirst Senitha Senanayaka filed this report.
The oil patch in the Diyavanna Oya was first spotted on the 17th of September, but the Central Environmental Authority says the oil is not spreading. Its Deputy Director General Ajit Veerasundara told News First the oil patch seems to have been caused by intention. Those responsible have not been identified yet. The Deputy Director General said waste from housing schemes often pollute the lake. He added that the water quality of the Diyavanna Oya is poor. Meanwhile,
identify the reason behind the oil patch. Tests are being carried out right now to find out who is behind this incident. We have an idea. Some say it is used coconut oil. Some say burnt ship fuel has been dumped into the waters. It is only after we test that we can say what it is for certain. Whoever is behind this will be punished regardless of their stature.
The Central Environment Authority's Director General Hemant Jayasinghe told News First that oil and grease have been mixed with the water.
Diyavanna Oya, the environment prestige of Colombo. It is home to many varieties of animals, including birds, reptiles, and many varieties of freshwater fish. There is no doubt that the layer of oil that appeared on top of the water of Diyavanna Oya caused an irreversible damage to this environment. Now the big question is, who is behind this incident and what can we do to prevent such incidents from happening again? With Chaturadeshan, I'm Senitha Senanayaka reporting for News First.
Education is one sector which was heavily impacted by the onset of COVID-19. Academic activities of school students and university students alike have been disrupted due to the pandemic, while exams continue to be postponed, posing a threat to the future custodians of our nation. How has the closure of schools and universities truly impacted the academic lives of students?
Speaking on our Jathika Mehevara program this morning, Additional Secretary to the Ministry of Education explained the plan in place to reopen schools in the country.
Firstly, we will reopen the primary sections of the schools with less than 200 students. Secondly, the primary sections of the schools with more than 200 students, grade 1 and 5, and schools with less than 100 students. That means primary section of schools with less than 200 students and schools with less than 100 students in total. Third stage would be to reopen the grades 10, 11, 12, 13 and all schools and reopen all grades of schools with less than 200 students. Fourth stage would be to reopen schools for all grades as per the usual. When we are going step by step, we can't do as we please. We've been instructed by the Health Ministry to take into consideration the spread of the virus upon completion of one stage.
Will schools be reopened by next year? The Education Ministry Additional Secretary responded.
We might have a chance of reopening schools this year. That is our primary goal.
In a statement yesterday, Education Forum Sri Lanka urged the government to reopen schools at the first opportunity, however with reduced examination pressures.
Definitely the school should be open for all children, but we need to prioritize. So I think that we have to prioritize the GCA level students, because that is a critical exam, and make sure that they get enough education to sit for the exam. I think they need 3 to 4 months preparation time. If I have a choice, I'd say postpone all 3 exams, but advanced level, let's be realistic. It determines a lot of other things, especially free of charge opportunities at public universities. So advanced level definitely must make every effort to hold it.
What is the situation with university students, and how has the closure of universities owing to the COVID-19 pandemic impacted them?
In the past 1.5 years is like a very desperate attempt on the part of the universities to try to get the students to complete their examinations, to do their studies, and to have the students passing out as soon as possible. The way this will affect students in the long run, I think, is in 2 ways. One is that there will be some level of delay that can affect students negatively, particularly in terms of employment.
At a recent policy dialogue by the Education Forum Sri Lanka, former Secretary, Ministry of Education and co-founder of Education Forum Sri Lanka, Dr. Tara Dimel, warned that the impact of lost years of education for children or children lost to the system due to dropping out will present a COVID education catastrophe with long-term implications.
And with that, it's a wrap of primetime news on TV1 for tonight. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Jamal Ratnayaka, alongside our sign language interpreter for tonight, Taraka Gabriel. Take care, stay safe, and good night.